pumped for what is about to happen. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out there. Lots of more opportunity to share quick wins in TechTO FaceTime coming up after this next fireside chat with Chris Best, founder and CEO at Substack. Welcome so much, Chris. Thanks for spending some time with us tonight and giving back to the TechTO community. Super pumped for this conversation. Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me. Of
course. Now, like so many amazing Canadian tech stories, it all starts at University of Waterloo, doesn't it? So I would love to hear from you. Like, can you remember how and why you made the decision to even go and study there?
I can remember quite clearly. I went to actually did a trip with one of my friends, and we went to a couple of engineering schools and weighed the relative merits. And at University of Waterloo, I could do a co-op program where I can make some money and actually afford to go to school.
The co-op program is a killer. Co-op programs still to this day, I think, are powering a lot of the Canadian technology ecosystem. So I love that. Now, at the time, were you already thinking entrepreneurship? Like, did you even know what that word was?
Yeah, I think I always sort of had in the back of my mind. I took systems engineering at Waterloo, which is kind of the misfit engineering, if you know anybody from there, the sort of the weirdos that wind up taking engineering but have some plethora of things they want to do.
So you sort of know that, like, can you think of like an example of like when you were younger in your early years that like really showed your entrepreneurship streak?
Not particularly.
Well, because people say like, is entrepreneurship, is it born or is it bred? You know?
I think it's got to be both. I think you have to be a little bit weird and then have the opportunity as well.
Good news. A lot of us here tonight are a little bit weird. So we've got that part for sure. Tell me a little bit about the story of founding your first company, that first sort of entrepreneurship taste.
Yeah. So the first real company I worked on was Kik. And I met Ted Livingston when we were in third year at Waterloo. And we were just messing around. Like I started building, I was the sort of technical co-founder. I built some of the early software. We started out making a music player for the BlackBerry because we're like, hey, smartphones are going to be a thing. And kind of, one thing led to another. We kept building things and some things worked, and it was a good time.
And you ended up building that company for like 8 years. When you were a student, did you think that you'd still be working on a music player for BlackBerry sort of 8 years after?
Well, we had this wild ride where we made the chat app and it went 0 to 1 million users in 10 days. And then BlackBerry tried to kill us. And it was a whole drama. No, I had no idea. we sort of, these things start to take on a life of their own sometimes.
When you think back to that crazy experience of, 1 million users in 10 days and all the things that you learned from music player to chat app to, now it's in the crypto space. Like, what do you take away from your experience at Kik?
Oh man, there's lots of things. I guess the one thing that influences me to this day is the belief that when you're designing sort of the digital spaces that we all now inhabit, it's sort of a hefty responsibility, because while you can't shape human nature, you can't really change people too much. When you're designing the space that they live in, the space where they interact with each other, the way you use to set up actually has profound implications on how people are going to experience their life there.
Wow. Sounds like you're a product designer now, like you're working on UX.
Yeah, a little bit. I kind of gravitated to product over time at Kik because I think that ultimately the human impact of the things we build is what matters.
And so is that what you were thinking when you started looking for the next thing to work on? Like, where did the idea for Substack originally come from?
So I deliberately took some time off after leaving Kik. I was like, I'm not going to work on my next thing. I'm going to live my life and see my friends and family and do all the things that you sometimes forget to do when you're building a company. And I've always been an avid reader. I've always believed that what you read matters. It shapes how you see the world, shapes how you think. In a real way, it shapes who you are. And one of the things I wanted to do with this sort of time in between things. I was like, I'm not going to start anything. I'm not going to get a job. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to write an essay. I'm going to write an essay about sort of my frustrations with the state of the media industry and internet culture. And I shared that with my friend Hamish, and one thing led to another, and we accidentally made a company while procrastinating from finishing that essay.
That's how much you didn't want to write.
Well, I mean, it's not that I didn't want to. It's that it's easy to like distract yourself with other things.
Did you end up finishing the essay?
Not really. I mean, we published. We actually, one of our first orders of business at Substack was we published kind of a founding manifesto, which incorporated a lot of our thinking from it, and actually got the ball rolling. So.
Now, it's interesting because the medium that you end up working in is email. And a lot of people then, and maybe even now, sort of write off email as sort of being dead or an older mode of communication. Like, what did you and your team see in email?
So email is wonderful. And I don't know if you know about the sort of Lindy principle, where the longer a thing lives, the longer you should expect it to live. And, you know, by that heuristic, we should expect email to be around a good while longer. And I think that email works really well for this thing that we're building because it solves this problem for writers of when we switch to mobile, everything is about being on that home screen. Like all of your attention, people don't browse the web anymore. They just go click on the little squares on their home screen. And email is one of the last free open platforms where you can reach out to someone, you can form a relationship with somebody and get onto their home screen without them having to install an app and without going through kind of the gatekeeping algorithms of their social media feeds.
Interesting. And do you see any similarities between like the messaging that you built at Kik and sort of email as the gateway with Substack? Like they're both sort of in the communication space. Are there things that you think overlap there?
Yeah, I think there's probably some overlap. I think this idea of a direct connection between people through the internet is a very powerful one.
Amazing. And so what's different, you talked about being the sort of the technical co-founder at your first setup, and now you're the CEO of the next one. Can you tell me a little bit about the change from CTO to CEO?
Yeah, it's a very different job. And we have a much better CTO now, so that really helps.
What like do you think of it as like do you think that systems engineering and the design training that you had is sort of informing your CEO philosophy now? Like, what are some of the formative things that you've read that have sort of helped you become the leader that you are now at Substack?
That's interesting. I definitely think that the PG canon is really good. You quoted a good PG thing before. I think all of those, especially for sort of the early stages, that's basically right. That's sort of like the right canon of knowledge to use.
Yeah.
That's the one that springs most immediately to mind.
And that's interesting because you also ended up going through the Y Combinator program as well, right?
Yeah, we did in winter 2018.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, why, and how it transformed the company, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that YC was very good for us. And I think probably the most important function it served for us was serving as a forcing function. Like it kind of was a commitment device, right? We came to this fork in the road. We'd written this essay and we'd launched with one writer on Substack. And this was still like, we were still a little bit in denial about like, are we doing a company? Is this going to be a thing? Like we sort of, we started the company because we couldn't talk ourselves out of it almost. And we're like, no, this is a great idea. We have to do this. And it put us to this decision. And for me, I was like, do you want to go to Silicon Valley for the period duration of this? Are you going to like uproot your life and make this thing happen? And more so, it came down to like, what kind of business are we trying to build here? Are we trying to build a cool thing that becomes sustainable and is sort of like a good sort of like, thing that makes money and it does something good in kind of a small way, which is an absolutely respectable path and something that I believe is very valuable? Or do we think do we aspire to work on something that reshapes the world? And by sort of forcing us into that decision early on, it kind of committed us to the trajectory that we now find ourselves on.
And so you had this idea and you thought this could be world changing. You went through the YC program as a forcing function. Has everything been up and to the right since then, or have there been a few like surprising things that have come out of the woodworks to get to where you are today?
I mean, there's always crazy things that happen. There's always challenging moments. I remember I gave a talk at Velocity where was I? One of the Waterloo places, and somebody came up and they're like, "Oh, like you're doing a big company now. Like I'm an early stage founder. Tell me, when does it become easy? Like when did you get that feeling that like it's just working? You don't have to work as hard anymore?" And I was like, literally never. That does not happen. As long as you're still on the track, like the only way that happens is if you fail, then it gets easy. If you don't, it gets different. It changes every little while.
So how do you measure success? Like, how do you know when to celebrate at Substack?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing for us is we're in this to serve writers and readers. Like we're empowering writers, letting them build an independent business. And so the things that feel the most meaningful to me are when we have writers that are very successful and when it changes their lives and changes the kind of work that they're able to do. And you do have to find moments to celebrate and to be happy. You have to find these times to just, you can kind of be like, yes, things are still going to be crazy, but for this 1 minute, we're going to let ourselves be happy because, we've done something great. So I think, the big milestones and the big writers.
What was the last milestone that you celebrated as a team?
What was the last? Honestly, it was coming into an office. We did that a week and a half. We're a little bit ahead on the vaccination schedule, I think, here in San Francisco. And It felt like the first day of school. It was like very good energy.
That's awesome. That is a good one to celebrate. I think a lot of us are waiting for any excuse to celebrate. We can't wait. Now, you started your path of entrepreneurship pretty early. It looked like you tried to take some time off in between and failed.
No, I set out to do a year, and it lasted at least 6 months, I think.
Okay, you got halfway there. Do you wish that you started your entrepreneurship journey earlier, or do you wish that you had maybe learned a little bit more from the old masters and started a little bit later?
I don't wish either of those. Like, I kind of think that the time to do it is when the circumstances strike and when you sort of have something that feels like a burning thing to do.
Right.
I don't think I would change what I did.
And now that you're working on one idea, like, do you have other burning ideas that you want to work on? Like, are you a polygamist entrepreneur? Like, do you want to be working on multiple things at once, or are you happy to be focused on this one?
No, I'm a monogamist entrepreneur in this thing. I'm very I aspire to work on something that I think is important enough and exciting enough that it becomes all consuming for me. And I have other ideas, I have other things floating in the back of my head, but I want to find that thing that lights a fire in me that feels important and feels like it's stretching and challenging me. And once I have that, I don't want to be split in many directions.
Now, there's a lot of people, I asked a couple of these questions because there's a lot of people here that might be thinking about their entrepreneurship journey, and I'm trying to encourage them to get started. But also, I also sometimes think it doesn't necessarily need to be the idea that's burning within them. It could just be a great idea that they want to solve. And because you're so monogamous in your entrepreneurship journey, I'm wondering if we could do a quick request for startups. If you could snap your finger and have a company created that solves problems for you, what would it be?
I have one. I have no idea if this is a company or not, but a tool that I really want is Superhuman for note taking. Like, I want a really good keyboard-driven note-taking plain text thing that works exactly the way I want it and nothing else.
How do you do your note taking today?
Would buy that, but I would buy the hell out of that.
How do you do your note taking today?
I do it in a text editor.
Wow. Okay. Real old school. So hey, have you heard of the Lindy principle about text editors?
Go on.
Yeah. I think they're going to be around for a long time. That's awesome. By
that logic, I should be using pen and paper probably.
Quill and ink and abacus for your, there's got to be innovation around here for sure. And I think I hear a lot that same one, Chris, for to-do lists. which is if only I could get an app that does exactly the way that I like to keep track of my to-dos.
Meanwhile, there's still 1,000 apps, and then you make the 1,001st app, and it doesn't actually solve it for anybody else.
Exactly. Cool. I wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of share a little bit about the Substack culture. We haven't got into it. I know we celebrated coming back to the office, and I know that you mentioned being a platform for really helping writers express their voice. But what is it, do you think, that makes somebody a good fit for the Substack community, whether it's as a writer or as a part of the team?
Yeah. I should probably, I don't think I gave the full pitch of what Substack is. It now occurs to me, which I should probably do.
Yeah, we just expect our listeners at TechTO to know, but let's just say someone's discovered
don't know by
us.
Now, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly. Hit us.
As I mentioned, we started Substack because we think that what you read matters, and we think that we've kind of lost control of what we read. Like the internet broke the business models for great writing, and now engagement-driven feeds are driving us crazy. And we believe that in order to fix that, we need to put writers and readers back in charge. Writers need true independence. They need a way to own their work and their audience, to get paid directly for the work they think is most valuable. Readers need to take back their mind. They need to choose for themselves how to spend their attention, who to read, who to trust. And so Substack is a platform in service of those ends. We're building the tools that make it dead simple for a writer to go independent, publish their web and email, make money from subscriptions, and also the place where readers can find the best writing and thinking on the internet. And so when you talk about the culture, I think probably the first thing that we look for is just people who care about that stuff, right? People who are writers or readers like us and think that this is not, and we never used to have this problem. Like early in the days of Substack, nobody wanted to join because it was a cool company, because it wasn't. And so the only people that would ever join the company are people that believe the same ludicrous things that we do and value reading and writing. But even as we grow and we sort of rise in profile, it's really important to me to find people for whom that mission resonates, who care about the thing that we're trying to do in the world. So that's a really big one. The commitment to a free press and the free-flowing ideas is kind of at the core of what Substack is. And so we look for people who care about those things as much as we do. And then I think of us as having a culture of service. Like we're here to serve writers and readers. So everybody in the company does a bit of customer support each week. We never forget that what we're doing is in service of people.
Do you dog food your own product? Do you have your own newsletter that you publish?
We do. We have a company one, we have a blog, and I have an internal family one. I should really do a public individual Substack, but that would require me to write things, which we've already established that I cannot.
Yeah, it usually turns into a company when you try to write.
I can't afford to start any new companies.
What topic do you think you would write on if you were publishing a Substack?
I mean, I would probably write about startups and stuff because it's my whole life. So it would be hard to have enough material for something else. Amazing.
Okay, so we're gonna enter into a lightning round. I'm gonna ask you a series of questions. You just got to go with what your heart is feeling. Okay, you ready, Chris? Okay.
I'm gonna be very bad at this.
Good. Apple or Android?
Apple. Are you kidding? Apple.
Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Bitcoin.
Pfizer or Moderna?
I think I got Pfizer. I don't really care either way. But whichever one you can get, obviously. Don't be.
That's the right answer. Andrew Chen or Li Jin?
Oh, you can't make me choose.
Waterloo or YC?
I mean, one and then the other, I think.
That's obviously the best path. CEO or CTO? And you can't say one and then the other.
Ooh. Depends on your pain tolerance.
What do you mean?
Depends what kind of pain you enjoy more.
How much time do you spend a day reading email newsletters?
Less than I'd like, but most of my reading is now on Substack. Actually, it's gotten to that point where it's naturally a lot of the best writing is here. So,
what's the most surprising or weirdest newsletter topic that you've seen on the platform?
Ooh. There's been a lot of really, really good ones. There's one lately that's writing about the history of text adventure games. That's really good. There's a lot of strange ones.
Yeah. Is there an NSFW category to Substack?
No.
Okay. Who was the first writer that you guys launched with on Substack?
It was a guy by the name of Bill Bishop who writes a newsletter about China.
Is Bill still on the platform?
He is still on the platform. He's an early investor. He was actually, we made our YC application and they asked us, how much money are you making? And we said, nothing. And then we went down for our interview the following week. And in the meantime, Bill had launched and had massive success on his first day. And so it says, we got to the interview, it says here you're making nothing. And we're like, actually, we have to update that for you. And here's what we made last week. And they're like, whoa. So Bill is a special place in our hearts.
And he has a huge, how big is Bill's following?
It's quite big. We don't share writers stuff. We see that as their thing to share, but it's been good for him, I think.
What's your favorite Substack subscription?
I love all my children equally.
How many are there? How many children do you have then?
How many Substacks are there?
Yeah.
It's like tens of thousands. There's lots.
But are you subscribed to the TechTO newsletter? Okay. You will be after this.
Tell me this. Is it on Substack?
It should be probably. You'll help. I'm sure you'll help us get onto it. Look, Chris, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for spending the time with the community, for giving back. There's a lot of people out here that are just enamored by the story, and we're rooting for you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And, we're hiring, so reach out.
Yeah. Well, let's just spend a moment on that. What are you hiring for, and where do you want them to be? Yeah,
so we're going to be, going forward, we're going to be kind of San Francisco headquarters and remote location as well. So we kind of are starting to have people all across. Thanks. Somebody posted the jobs link. Thank you very much. We also have a pretty good, my co-founder, Jay, is in Toronto at the moment. And we have a pretty good Toronto contingent. So anywhere in Canada is great. And I think especially in Toronto, you probably have some good folks. We're hiring a lot of things, but, engineering, products.
Yeah. Data analyst, recruiters, head of product. There's a lot of stuff there on that job board.
Yes, there is.
Awesome. Well, Chris, we'll be following and excited to have you celebrate the opening of your Toronto office here one day soon. All right.
Great. Well, thank you very much. This has been really fun.
All right. Take care, Chris.
Thanks.
Unbelievable. What an amazing story. Thank you so much for joining us.